Line unmuted.
All right, ready to get started with standing for prayer. Mr. Nancy, please.
Father in heaven, we thank you right now for this hour. We thank you for this opportunity. And Lord, we bless your name because your name worthy to be blessed. Father, as we enter this meeting, we enter this meeting with open heart, open mind, to do what's right for this city. We thank you for what you've done thus far. We pray for this country. We pray for this county. We pray for everybody that lives within there. Bless your holy name for that. We ask you to forgive us for our sins and forgive those who trespass against us. And we thank you. We bless your name again if you'll do what's right for our citizens. We thank you, not only this county, but this state, this country. Father, we know you pray for those folks right now in Ukraine and elsewhere around the world where the disasters is upon them right now. But it's their time and it's our time will be down the road. And we thank you. Bless you, Father. It's all we can do, and we thank you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I'd like to welcome everyone to our meeting, this Tuesday, January 17th, 6 p.m. We have a conference line set up. The number is 917-900-1022. Access code is 32347#. This is not a toll-free number, and you may be subject to long-distance charges according to your long-distance plan. When the chairperson opens the meeting for public comment, please follow the instructions. If you wish to speak, please dial *5. The moderator will unmute your line when it is your turn to speak and notify you by announcing the last 4 digits of your telephone number. Please announce your name and address. You'll be allowed to speak for 3 minutes. Any person wishing to address the board regarding an agenda item will be given 3 minutes for comment. A commenter may only speak 1 time for each agenda item. And with that, now does everyone have the approval of the revised agenda
Motion.
with 19A?
Second.
Have a motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed, same sign. All right. On our consent items, does everyone have a chance to review consent? We have a motion.
Motion to approve the consent items.
Second. Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed, same sign. All right, we'll drop to bids, public hearing, number 13. The board received bids set for this date at 6 p.m. or as soon thereafter as possible for Slaughter Road widening resurfacing project. Good, have you?
I actually received 5 responses to this one. That is very encouraging.
And who's your state committee?
It'll be myself and Hank, and if you need 3, you're welcome to be on it. Actually, I can do Scott.
Whichever. You want Scott?
Yes, now do the 3 of us.
Okay.
Oh, that's my tackle box. Well, this one- thank you.
Just with the anticipation of expecting prices to be a little high, we will take these, I'll take one, I'll leave one with the clerk, I'll take the rest. And my guess is that I'll probably have to reach out to DOT and address any differences in the budgeting amounts. What we saw in March was that the price estimate at that time was right in line with the available funding for it. And then by August, the engineer, the consultant was expecting a tremendous increase in the pricing. I hope he's wrong. I guess we'll find out in just a minute. I do too. This one's been a long time coming. Remember, they funded it in sequences. They actually funded half of it, and then the next year they funded the next half, so we wound up waiting a year in order to do the whole thing as one, and then on the heels of that, permitting took nearly a year to get it done.
They've done a good job. Appreciate what you do.
I hope this is close, because they're really, really getting tight. They sent me a request the other day and asked me to prioritize some projects. Not only were they in different funding years, but they were in competing, not in competing, but in different programs. So I immediately asked them, are you asking me to make these jobs start competing against each other? Because I really don't want to do that. And they backed off from it, so they're not doing that yet, but that's a potential.
Kenneth, what's the budget amount?
I'm hoping these things come in around $2.1 million, but
Number of them.
I'm hoping and praying it is.
Here we go.
Yeah, so the first one is Anderson Columbia from Lake City, Florida. All right, so the total lump sum bid price is $2,929,652.56. $2,929,652.56. So the next one is Sandco LLC from Tallahassee, Florida. The total lump sum bid price for theirs is $2,777,618.49. $2,777,618.49.
And these are only construction, not CDI. Right?
Right, when I said the 2.1, that was taking into account the original amount that we were receiving from DOT, minus the design cost and minus the CEI cost.
Okay.
So I was giving you funds that we have available to put towards
Just for
construction.
construction.
We're going in the right direction.
All right, so this one is from PB and Sons Construction in Havana, Florida. And their bid is $3,110,151.55. $3,110,151.55.
Kenneth, how many miles is this road?
Right at 2.
So it's still about more than $1 million a mile to pay.
More like 1.5 at this point.
Yeah, when I started here, asphalt was typically around $40 a ton in place, and it is easily well over 100 now.
How many years ago was that? Never mind.
23,
All right,
24 this year.
so the next bid is Capital Asphalt Inc. from Tallahassee, Florida, and their bid is $5,675,000. $5,675,000.
What a bargain.
Nothing surprised us.
And the last bid is CWR Contracting, that's C.W. Roberts Contracting from Tallahassee, Florida. Their bid is $3,625,000. $3,625,000.
Okay, so you can see we're somewhere in the neighborhood of 600,000 to 700,000 away from just being able to execute the contract. So I will put these bids on our website tomorrow. I will forward them to DOT with our hat in our hand, asking for some type of funding. Realize that in the past that they have always made the offer of saying, you know, you may have another project that you haven't moved forward with, you can move those funds forward and resubmit that project for a later funding year. We try to stay away from that type of resolution, but we'll see. I'll let you know. Probably won't be doing anything obviously until the next board meeting, but hopefully I'll have something.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
You want that, isn't it?
Just keep the envelopes.
No, all we're just doing is receiving the bids, and so, we've got those amounts read, so that's what.
Move the constitutional officers, unit 14, the board to consider approval of 2022 fall E911 rural county maintenance grant agreement. Agenda by Dakota Cruz, 911 program.
Well, basically, in 2020, the state received federal funding. So they just complied by adding in the terms and agreements needed by the board. It used to, I believe they would do the grant application, it would be signed, and then the state would approve it, and then we would move forward. Now we do the full or the spring application or the full application, it gets turned into y'all sign all that gets turned into them, they approve, and then they come back with that. Because the grant applications outline all necessary components of compliance with the federal next gen I-1 grant program, the rural county grant program, and the state grant program. These agreements incorporate existing grant requirements that have been in effect but have not previously required a signature agreement from sub-recipients. The necessity of the grant application is to have a written understanding of all acceptable state and rural grant rules and laws that must be met by all parties. And then again, the state began the requirements after receiving the federal funding in 2020.
Question from the board.
Motion to approve.
Discussion, y'all read my letter?
It was in the packet.
Well, just want you to be aware of just a couple of things. If the funds become unavailable, the department will have the final authority as to the availability of funds. I'm not reading the whole letter. Department, at its sole discretion, may terminate the agreement. And guess where venue is of any litigation? Leon County. So, but it's a grant of $10,978.81. So, just want everybody understand that we're signing that. Lawyer doesn't like it, that's okay.
Well, I guarantee we have, the quotes in here and everything, so everything's in compliance. Like, we once it's approved and everything, the money's there, we pay the, risk,
Understand,
yeah.
understand. I'm just letting them know that we ain't got much say once we sign,
Yes, sir.
you know?
Do you think we should, change any of that?
They won't agree. We've tried it before, you know?
My motion stands, then.
Got a motion, got a second.
Making y'all aware.
Got a second, all in favor? Anyone opposed, same sign? County staff items, the board consider approval of final plat for Hermit Crafts Retreat subdivision. Given by
So really, this could have been, a consent type item, except for that, because it's a final plat, it'll require the signatures of myself, the clerk, the county attorney, and you, once it's been accepted. You will see in your packets that, we have reviewed it, found it to be in compliance with chapter 177, and is appropriate for recording.
Got a motion?
Motion?
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed, same sign?
The developer's agent should be giving us the Mylars. I would expect either tomorrow or probably the day after. As soon as we get that, we'll coordinate with you to get the signatures.
Yeah, I have one question. 10-foot setbacks on the sides
That's right.
instead of, isn't it usually 15?
It depends on the land use classification.
Okay,
So it varies based on that.
okay, that's fine.
Yes, sir.
Now, the board consider approval of 2023-24 legislative appropriation project request given by Melanie Cox.
I just want to review with the board, before you discuss this. During the November board meeting, several potential projects were discussed. There was a project of an additional softball field at the sports complex. 2 new fire stations were discussed, potential of Steinhatchee, Shady Grove, and we also discussed the renovation or expansion of current staff stations, which would include the station at the beaches or potentially Station 1. Of those 2 stations, the beaches would take priority because of the retrofitting that we had to do to allow for 24-hour coverage. Additionally, I did learn today that the sheriff's office would like to submit a request for $500,000 for slurs radios. They did offer to me that if the board did not wish for them to submit the appropriation request, that was up to the discretion of the board, if the board would like to fund the purchase of those radios. So it's really at your discretion. If you want that as a potential competitor for funding, it can be submitted, or they did offer to not to submit that appropriation request.
Does the 500,000 cover the total cost?
Sir?
I don't believe, does the $500,000 cover the total cost
No,
for
sir.
radios?
No. That would only be the sheriff's office portion. I believe it was 517 or something like that.
I see. So we have to somehow come up with,
Well, now,
wasn't that approximately $1 million replacement?
it was about 8.
It's right around 3/4 if you include fire rescue.
Yeah.
But like I said, in ours is where the AFG grant for that is open right now, so we're in the process of getting our application ready. I believe the next board meeting we'll be asking for permission to submit for,
And that's only for the fire
just for
portion.
the fire portion.
And of course, doesn't include the city or any other agency.
I see.
The amount of that grant.
That was about 270,000 if I remember right off the top of my head. But with that number, that's a 10% match on that, but we have budgeted in capital already this year that we can use for our cost match on that. So as long as we get the grant, the fire rescue won't have to ask for additional funds.
And that's a competitive.
It is a competitive grant.
What was the bid on it? What was their bid on it?
We have about a week to submit the request. I believe I've got on my calendar the 23rd to submit. So what we need from the board is,
The deadline is first radio.
I'm sorry, we have another year, no.
It's been a moving target for us. I have to go back and check, but like I said, for the grant, we have to have that application done by this upcoming year. Think,
This fall, we need to go ahead and issue the purchase order.
I think it was 2024 was the deadline for the P25 conversion with the state. I can verify it, but
I think we have a year, but the request was to submit the purchase order maybe
You don't
this
order it ahead of
fall.
time.
So we make sure that when they actually do the cutover, that we have our hands on the radios.
The reason for that was there's been shipping delays on everything. The last batch of orders, radios we ordered took a long time. And that if we waited till after October 1 to place the order, it might be in that window where we may or may not. And like I said, but that deadline is still a moving target because they're still having to build the infrastructure as they move up, and the hurricanes in South Florida, they have to go back and fix a lot of that before they can continue progress north. So we don't have a hard date on that.
Yeah, it seems like to me that we discussed this, not too long ago. I think, were you here? Yeah. And so at that time, we talked about other funding sources.
We did.
And so I think one of them was from the Affordable Care Act. Was that?
No, ma'am, I think what was discussed, so we have what was reimbursed by the CARES Act funds that is now in general fund reserves. So that was about $2 million that was reimbursed to the board that is in reserves. There's also 1 cent, maybe some availability of 1 cent sales tax reserves that could be utilized for the purchase of these radios.
Since we already have 2 or 3 things that we have identified to ask for, and then here at this last hour, I'm not in favor personally of adding this to this request. I think that we should come back and revisit that at another meeting and look for other funding sources.
It just, I realized this afternoon that I really should reach out to the sheriff's office since they did submit an appropriation request last year and just make sure that, just check with them if they plan to submit another project. And so they did indicate that they would defer to the board.
Okay, and I want to make it clear that, I'm not against them getting new Starz radios. They need those. I just
Well, they have to have, right.
mix it in with what we're doing right here.
Right.
Just have a question, I guess. Okay, $500,000, what generates that number? How do we arrive at it?
It's the number of radios and equipment that would be needed.
So that would take care of the need for the number of radios that the sheriff's department has to replace,
Yes.
which we discussed previously.
Yes.
See,
Isn't there a time that they have to go ahead and replace them? There's
Yes.
a drop dead date on that.
There is.
When
You
is
have
it?
to cut over it. We think it's about a year from now.
And they had to be ordered, in a certain period.
That was the concern, and that's why and I don't know that that's written in stone yet. I think it's being rolled out in phases, from what I understand. But in order to meet the timeline for the first phase, I believe the radios would either have to be ordered this summer or in the fall or somewhere in that time frame. We haven't exactly nailed it down.
So I remember talking about them saying they didn't want to be behind everybody else that's ordered them because they might be
Well, then.
past the deadline to get them.
Correct. Then there was a concern of availability. And I believe there was also the potential of a regional effort so that, they would, you'll have to help me, so they would be able to communicate with surrounding counties if they made that first cutover.
And there's a lot more counties that are starting to switch over to slurs right now. Compared to 10 years ago, we were the only ones, and that's starting to phase over to everybody's going to this new system. The one thing I will say on the radios is we are having to buy them from L3Harris, and that's the same people that own the P25 radio system are building it for the state. So if we have an order placed and it's their fault, we're not holding onto the radios, gives us a very good argument there of saying, you can't shut off these other radios because you haven't provided us the new hardware. So it wouldn't be the complete end of the world. They say, hey, it's ready. And we'll say, yeah, but you're not 100% ready because you didn't give us these radios yet. But if we haven't placed the order and then they say, hey, it's time, then we don't have any argument there.
So if I may ask my question, is there the potential that there could be just the additional requests in this list? See? I'd like to say, I know we have discussed the potential for funding with our fire stations, but, I guess the case I'd like to make is that, I think we should, when we're looking at the needs that we currently have, we should turn some focus on these fire stations that we have staff that also have needs for renovation. And some of those we have discussed are flooded, like Steenhatchee. I think in the conversation that we had, we also brought up Station 6 and understanding the age of that building, the need for the staff's quarters there, and some of those needs that are ongoing with that. So I just like to bring before the board, when we look at staff stations, if we can say that this should be a priority, I think it also lines up with the State of the County report and the call volumes that we also discussed in that particular meeting, understanding that I believe Station 6 was 149 and Station 7 was 160 on the call volume report. So if we look at those numbers and we look at the information that we have there for growth, and I took the opportunity to reach out to the water and sewer districts down in that area, and what they confirmed was that there is continued growth in those areas, and we're going to continue to see those kind of call volumes in respect to folks over there. So that being said, I would like to see this board put a priority on the potential for Station 6 and 7, given that we're looking at stations that have staff members there currently with high call volumes and high demands on their time and the needs of providing the service. Also, I would be in support of including the slurs radios for the sheriff's department. For that.
Now, just for the sheriff's department or for the sheriff's
For the
department?
$500,000 is what I would say. That's the only ones that I'm.
Well, the fire department will need radios for the fire department as well. So I just want to make sure I understand.
Sure. So I would say for slurs radio, so we can make that cut over at the appropriate time.
For the sheriff's office and the fire department? Okay. But we can submit both for the grant and.
Yes, we can still do the AFG grant for those, and then using the legislation request, it could be as a fallback that we don't get one, hopefully we're still gonna get the other, so we don't have to go out of pocket for any of it.
I just think that process would reach out to try to obtain the funding that we had the opportunity for.
We're talking about 16 on the agenda. Looks like it's
Yes, sir.
$400,000 on one, 200 on one, and 200 on the other. That's the one we got before us right now.
So,
And that's the one we have had here for a while.
so the Taylor County Sports Complex would be $400,000. And then the numbers that we came up, just trying to address inflation, that, 2 years from now, potentially, we wanted to ask for $2 million for construction of a new fire station wherever, either Shady Grove, Steenhatchee, or another location. So it's 2 fire stations at $2 million apiece, and the sports complex additional field at $400,000, and then whatever the total would be for the slurs radios for the sheriff's office and the fire department is what we're.
Now, we're gonna present this for Corey and, Jason Show.
Yes, sir, we do need to mention whichever projects that the board decides on. Staff will submit the annual appropriations request, but then at our legislative delegation, we always discuss these projects as well.
Okay.
And that's the 30th.
That's the 30th.
The meeting is the 30th.
He in this on?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Biggs?
Thank you. If y'all recall, not too long ago, we had a discussion about these requests that we were gonna make. And at that time, what I remember is we verbally agreed, we did not vote, but we verbally agreed that we, by the priority, that the first priority would be to, do the softball fields at the sports complex, since we've already, had funding for that and we already have it going. We also at that time agreed that Steenhatchee needed a new firehouse, and I think we all know the reasons, because of flooding issues and this, that, and the other. Then, at that time, I mentioned the Shady Grove Firehouse. And so after we talked about that, and then of course, Commissioner Newman, threw in the, fire station at the beaches to expand that. Well, I just want to say that the Shady Grove community does not just consist of Shady Grove, but it also consists of Lake Bird and Eridu. And it is my belief, and most of the citizens in that area, that there is a new permanent firehouse needed. I'm going to tell you the reasons. Number one, the north end of the county, my end of the county, does not have a permanently staffed firehouse whatsoever. But the beaches, they do have one, and they have a full-time staff person there. We don't have that in Shady Grove. We have nothing except our volunteers. I'm going to talk about that. Number two, Shady Grove, Lake Bird, and Eridu are covered only by 3 volunteer firefighters. And these folks have been volunteering, these 3 have been volunteering for over 30 years. They've gotten up in the middle of the night, they've left the dinner table, they've left family functions to go out and to save someone's home from burning down and to save lives. They've been very dedicated, they've done a very good job of that. These folks are getting older now, and they are not going to be able to continue to do this forever. And we should not expect them to continue to do this forever. It would not be right, it would not be prudent to wait until these volunteers are beyond their service capability and find ourselves in a jam and, okay, what are we gonna do now? Because we don't have anybody. So I'm also looking at the future. I'm looking at the present needs now, and I'm looking at the future of this community. Number 3, we have not been successful in recruiting new volunteers because few people these days are volunteering for anything. Just look at the other organizations that we have trouble getting volunteers. Just look at the water board at the beach. You know, we've always got 1 or 2 or have had vacancies down there. Even if you look at the churches, people are not even volunteering and going to church like they used to. So people are just not doing what they've always done. And we have not, I have to say, we have not been successful in offering volunteer training classes or maintaining the ones that we even started. So we've had some issues with that. So again, we cannot and should not continue to solely depend upon these volunteers. Number 4, the Shady Grove communities are growing, and growth is not going to stop. I'm telling you, people have bought homes up there, they've moved up there, they've bought homes sight unseen. So this is a phenomenon that's going on, and it's not going to change. It's going to continue to grow. And I know that somebody's going to ask about funding, and I don't make proposals without thinking about funding. Obviously, nothing is free. If we want the services, we have to pay for it, just like we pay for all other services. You know, that's just what we have to do. But it will, if we do obtain this, funding from the legislature, and if we do choose Shady Grove, then that will take care of the infrastructure, but it won't take care of the staffing, so we'll have to find a funding source for that. Yes, it has to be paid for, it's gonna cost something, it's not gonna come free. But my proposal would be that, that we could put one staff member up there. We could still rely on our volunteers. And I'm gonna also talk later about increasing our volunteer program and classes and such as that. So, we would only have to find funding for one staff member, just the way they've got it in Steve Hatch, the beaches already. Here's what I would like to see happen tonight. That we take responsibility tonight and place a new firehouse in Shady Grove where the present volunteer station is as the number 3 priority. And this would be to protect those homes and the lives of the citizens in the northern part of the county, just like we do in other districts. The northern end of the county is no different. They deserve and they deserve the same kind of protection that they get in the south end. Let's see. I think this action would be proactive, and instead of waiting and being reactive, as I discussed earlier, we just don't want to wait until we get in that jam when we don't have anybody, because when we've done that in the past and you wait until that time comes, you're going to be in a situation where you, most of the time, ultimately, you spend more money anyway because you haven't had time to plan. So this way, we can plan for the future, we can have our ducks in a row. I would like to step up the volunteer program, and I'm going to also suggest tonight that on our workshop next week, that I would like to agenda that we talk about this volunteer program, how we're going to get out there and encourage and find more people that will volunteer, how we're going to do these classes, and to make sure that when classes start, that they finish, they don't stop in the middle. And also I'm going to talk about probably some kind of compensation. So for next week, I'd like to have that on the agenda. I think that's pretty much all the good reasons why we should choose Shady Grove, who has no coverage except these volunteers, versus a place that already has coverage. And I would really, really appreciate this board if you would highly consider this area, these folks, and a lot of them here tonight. And I'm sure they're here to let you know how much that they need a station up there, you know. And I want to thank all of y'all who took the time tonight to come, and I want you to speak. And thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. Thank you. And I am not in favor of adding the slurs to this. Let's leave that and address that separately.
You know, I'm ready, I don't even know if he's talking about the slurs, but I'm ready to vote on what we have on the agenda.
Mr. Chair, if someone wants to speak, would you mind?
Well, yeah, I wanna, you got anything you need to add, Mr. Dillon? Yeah, I'm in favor of consistency with these legislative appropriations. I mean, we gotta change in our request up, and we look pretty incompetent, I would say, in the legislative session, so, you know, we've had this complex, Taylor County Sports Complex on the list for, was this the third appropriation now?
Yes.
Our Steve Hatch Fire Station, obviously, we never got an issue there that's needing to be addressed. That's been on the list for a couple of years. And, you know, Shady Grove, I mean, I can mimic a lot of what Commissioner Fiegel did just say. I mean, you got a lot of folks there that's been there for many years. And if we sit around and wait on it, at the end of the day, when these guys are where they can't respond, it falls back on the county. Who's the people gonna call? They're gonna call the county and wonder why their tax dollars, they can't get service in that north end of the county. So, I'm in favor of you know, leaving the complex as is, you know, Steenhatchee as number 2, Shady Grove at number 3, and I know that whole, you know, hiring process, that's a whole nother conversation. I mean, that's not even for tonight. That's a whole nother conversation as far as the hiring process and volunteer process. I mean, we're trying to, you know, commit to legislative appropriations tonight. So, as far as the slurs, I mean, I'm in favor of them getting the radios for sure. I mean, they gotta have the radio. It's a must, you know, come, but I mean, are we gonna get $5 million out of the legislative group? We
did currently, this year, we received over $5 million.
Not in the appropriation.
Yes, we did.
Between the jail and.
The jail and the courthouse, remember? But we don't typically get that much.
It was, so, anyway, I mean, it don't hurt to add it, I guess. I mean, I don't mind if we add it, but I mean, but I guess if we added it, are they gonna say, well, this money's gonna be for these radios, and are they gonna kind of, even though
These projects will compete against each other.
Yeah, it could take away from what this
I'm
is.
in favor of just leaving them 3, and then we would just need to search for other funding sources on the radios. I mean, we've got 3 items here that's pretty near and dear to what needs to be done in the community. And, I think as one gets checked off, we need to bump the ones up to the top.
That's right.
And keep adding to it, you know, I mean, if we send 3 appropriations in, then we get 2 of them funded, I think we've done pretty good.
Absolutely.
So, I'm gonna be in favor of, you know, the sports complex is number 1. You know, Steenhatchee Fire Station, new construction, Steenhatchee Fire Station number 2, and, a new construction of Steenhatchee, Shady Grove Fire as number 3. And then, you know, I'm in to talk about new hiring processes and, you know, our volunteer processes, because I mean, I think we probably some gaps there, you know, that need to be filled.
Yeah, so I just like to follow up and say, I'm not against, the Shady Grove, community and what we might as well call Zone 8, having a fire station. I think at appropriate timing, we could have that discussion. I'm just trying to base my decision upon, you know, the fact of what was stated, in the State of the County presentation, and Zone 8 had 39 calls. And Zone 6, which is also where Station 6 is, had 149 calls. And Station 7, which corresponds with Zone 7, had 160 calls. So I want to be very clear. I'm not against every community having representation for emergency services. But I think that we also need to look and understand that we have dedicated staff that is also responding with our volunteers. And as I've asked and done some research in this topic, I've seen where those folks work good together and where the needs are currently being met. So the thing that has gotten me to this place to consider our staff fire stations is not to take away from one area or another, but to look at our factual representation as far as call volumes and response times, and see in a way that we might seek out appropriations from our legislators to help out in these areas that have staff. So I just wanted to be clear about that. You know, when we see these kind of call volumes and understand what our staff members are working through, I do think that should be considered when we're seeking out for appropriation. So again, I would agree with the sports complex and Steenhatchee at priority 2, but I think the numbers support the consideration for Station 6. That's a staffed fire station that's logged in the last year over 149 calls. And so that's how I'm basing that. In respect to the slurs radios, I feel like if we don't ask for the appropriation, we're not going to be considered. So I'm certainly in support of seeking the slurs radios, and they can be a priority forward.
Michael, how many of those calls that you have listed there, is the majority of them ambulatory?
Right, so fire calls are call outs. And so there are responses in all those areas, and what I would say is we're looking at the total call volume, and we have these folks in these areas responding to these number of total calls. That's my understanding.
Okay, so we don't have a breakdown of which.
I think at some point I have seen some numbers that show different responses, but I'm looking at total call outs, which includes ambulatory. So it's not to skew the information, it's what was presented, and it's the data that I feel like we need to consider.
Do we know how many of those call-outs from the other districts that have had to cover District 8 when no one's been available? Because if 39 was available, that the District 8 personnel handled.
One at a time.
Yeah. Ask me that again, please.
Obviously, it's a volunteer fire station. There's a few volunteers. If they are unable to cover a call, how many calls into that service area have been handled by other service areas? I know at least one has, because an engine from here in town covered a car accident out in front of Mitts one day last fall. And I just want to make sure that we're counting those when we start talking about services provided.
I think the chief can address that.
Okay.
All right, so the way we're set up, Station 1 that's located at the airport,
Yes.
that is our main truck that goes countywide. So if Shady Grove is dispatched, that station automatically responds north of town to go to Shady Grove as well. If Miss Norman, Miss Gary, Steve's out of town, or something, whatever, we always have someone going. That's a paid crew. Same if they're going to Econfina or way down 27. So that is our central truck out of Station 1, that they don't have their own fire district. Because basically, there's not, like Keaton Beach has a paid person, Station 7 and Steenhatchee has a paid person. So they have their own districts. That Station 1, like I said, there is not a district for that one. So if Station 8 is dispatched, it's Station 8 and Station 1, so on and so forth.
And Station 8 will always be attempted dispatched out to something in their area, service area.
Yes.
Okay.
And the call volume, so this 39, that is even, because we collect it for when Station 1 goes, that call volume is anything where we were sent to the District 8 zone for Shady Grove. So it's not how many times, did Engine 8 roll out of Station 8. That's how many times did we receive a call from dispatch for that fire district.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And that's pulled out monthly. We go through and pull those numbers.
All right.
Yeah, and I don't wanna, I'd like to keep this conversation going because I know Steve for sure has some numbers he wants to give us. But what I wanted to say is it just causes me a lot of angst that someone could actually sit here and say, y'all just get more volunteers in the north end and leave it like it is and depend on the units from Perry to come and help you out. But down in this other end, oh yeah, let's just go ahead and expand and put another firefighter. What about volunteers in the south end? I mean, if you're talking about nothing in the north end and you want to add to the south end, that just doesn't make any sense to me. But I like what I'm hearing. I want to hear more about that.
Oh, yeah, yes. So, thank you very much, and I want to appreciate it because Station 8's been needing a new station for quite a while. Station 6 is a good station. They just renovated it, 3 years ago? They made it a paid station 4 years ago. They just put all this money into it to renovate it, to make it where a paid fireman can live there. So if they get a call, they can go back and decontaminate. They get thirsty, they have a way to get some water. We don't have potable water at our station, so if we get a call and we're contaminated, we have no way to contaminate now, which I'm looking at the future, because we're getting older and we're trying to get people to come on, but we're gonna need a paid station eventually, so why not go ahead and be proactive instead of reactive. Because Station 6 is a fairly good station. I've been there numerous times, and it has working bathroom and a working kitchen and a bunk room and all that, where ours doesn't have one. We can't decontaminate after calls. Now, granted, we only ran 39 calls last year that we were called to. I know we could have got called to more, but I knew that Gary and Norma wasn't up there, so to call for lift assist on an ambulance, to call them that they're not there. And I know county fire is going to take as long to get there, all the way up there, so we don't call for assistance. Where when we go down to the beaches, we know it's going to be a 20-minute trek down there, so we'll call for Station 6 to assist, to respond, to give those citizens, a quick response from some type of emergency services. So that's why we call Station 6 to respond medically, which are like, I don't know, 75% of the call volume per county fire in that area. Don't quote me on the number. It's somewhere pretty high. We call them for all the time to respond to medical assist. Same way with Station 7. Station 7, we also utilize them as well to help with medical calls for lift assist and whatnot. So the call volume is going to be a lot higher as well. The main concern I'm on the new station, it's been built, I don't know, back in the early 80s.
1980.
Early 80s. And we did a little bit of renovation to try to make it a little bit better. But it needs to be rebuilt. And I appreciate y'all's support. But it needs to be rebuilt so we can decontaminate after calls. Just like, I don't know if you're a volunteer or not, but when you get done working a call and you have all the carcinogens, if you're working a bad accident, you have biohazard blood, all sorts of pretty nasty stuff on you that you want to decontaminate, which right now we have to utilize a water hose outside in order to try to spray us down until we can strip down and properly decontaminate. It's just something that would definitely benefit us in long term and for our health, if not anything else. So I do appreciate it, and I hope number 3 is Shady Grove, because it's needed. We don't have the facilities necessary now in order to efficiently do our job as volunteers. So, thank you.
Yes, Steve.
Yes.
I'm Norma Holden. I'm firefighter for Shady Grove. Been a firefighter for 38 years there. I helped start that department. And right now, when we first started, I'd like to say that back when we started in 1985, there were 9 volunteer fire stations. Bill Kraft was instrumental in starting the beaches, Sting Hatchie, and then Solon Meads for North and West District, and then Shady Grove and Eardu and Inconfini, and he helped us get started. We had nothing, but we organized in 1985, and 9 committed people took firefighter 1 class, and very committed. And when we took that class, we realized that the county didn't have money to help us. There was 9 stations. So we put on our work boots and got work. And we built that little station down there with our own hands. We poured concrete, we built it. We put a pump down, a well down, a pump. The county gave us, when we got started, the county gave us, it was surplus that Bill Kraft had come up with for us from Ocala, a little military Jeep, 2-seater, that was just a big box of metal. We put a 100-gallon tank on it, and we fought our first house fire with that thing, and it was a 2-story house, and we left it standing. We shuttled water from my house to there with a water hose filling it up. And then we were able to, the county gave us a 1957 LaFrance engine. I can tell you a lot of stories about that one. He used a grease gun on it every time we went to a call, or else she didn't pull gauges. Then we saw a need for a way to fill our tanks up. So we searched for a holding tank that we could fill water and drive our trucks up under it and fill it up in a hurry. So we fundraised, y'all. Our even old ladies around Shady Grove made cakes. We sold cakes. We worked. We didn't ask y'all for anything. And we built our station. And we, anything we needed. I mean, y'all helped all you could, but it was hard when you had 9 stations. But we put that holding tank up there. We put it on stilts. And so we could drive up under and fill up. And over the years, the 22 years, we were able to, we had an awesome volunteer program which has fell under the wayside. We don't have that anymore. And at this point, Steve that just spoke to you, he's an EMT with Century. We are so blessed to have him. But other than that, it's me and that 70-year-old man back there, and I'm heading that direction myself. So if something don't happen soon, our community is going to be in a mess. And we have made a difference in Shady Grove. We've saved lives, we've saved property. And it's time now. We've come to y'all over the years and said, look, every time we approach young men and women to come on and help us, it's how much are y'all going to pay me? And it's the world we're living in now, and with hard times come on us, they deserve a little something for getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning, working all day. We've done it. Gary works shift work. We work all day. We get up at 2 o'clock and fight a fire and go home, take a shower and go to work. And we just don't have the volunteers anymore. So if y'all don't see fit to help get us a paid fireman down there, I worry about our people. Those people down there, when we get called to a house fire wreck, 9 out of 10 times, it's my family or my friends. And what are we going to do if we don't do something soon? So in the meantime, I know we can't just make the paid firemen just poof and they're here. It's going to cost money. It's going to take time. And I'd like to ask that in the meantime, if we could work together on a good volunteer program, that we would offer an incentive to young guys and women to come on and help us and get a program and a little package for them. Something maybe monthly, quarterly, or whatever, or we've even come before y'all for our age group. Donald Bowden, he's 70-something. We got Kim Parker, Gary and I. Give us a little retirement package or something, but y'all never seen fit to do that. But now, these young men and women, they're gonna have a little something, some incentive to work all day and get up in the middle of the night and fight a fire, work wrecks, and go back to work. So I'm just asking y'all on behalf of the community of Shady Grove to please look at us, because that number 3, just give us some money. And then also look at the volunteer program. Start a little piggy bank with Taylor County Volunteer Fire Rescue. Throw us a little money in that we can start a program for our volunteers. Because I'll tell you what, when you get a good volunteer, they care about their people, they care about their community, and they'll be the most dedicated people to you. So I just ask everybody to just pray about that and let's do what's right or what's needed right now.
Jamie, I got one question to ask. It's just one question. Mr. Newman, you talked about call volume. I pulled 2 people out of burning houses, saved their life. I'm not bragging, I'm just telling you, call volume don't mean crap. I'm not being ugly towards you, but I'm just saying, if you save one person's life because of that fire station, it's worth it all.
And I'd like to ask this, and so I don't have all that information, and I certainly wouldn't downplay any of that, but we have a host of folks that are salary that take those same risks. So I can't say that it's fair to discount the availability and the responses that they do make. I'm not taking away from any of your efforts. That's certainly not what my job is and not what my intention is. So I do understand about volunteer firefighting. I do have an understanding about that. I am not a current volunteer firefighter. But I'd also say that I don't think it's fair to say that the call volumes don't mean anything. I mean, other than that, I mean, how are these numbers built on budgets and basing why we have paid positions? And how can we just look at those and just throw all that as caution to the wind?
Well, no, but let me say this. You know, St. Hatchie, I'm all for them building a new station because they need one. It floods and they just have a lot of problems with it. I'm all about that. The beaches, they've got paid firemen down there. They got a new station all down there. Yeah, you can keep dumping money in there if you want to, but they've got paid firemen there already.
Sure, that's
So,
St. Hatchie.
Right. And y'all want to keep adding to it, and don't want to do nothing in Shady Grove. You know, we need a new station up. You know, I'm not all about right now getting a paid fireman up there. I know it's eventually gonna come. But if you decide next year to put a paid fireman up there, you're gonna have where to put him. Because there's not a sleeping quarters or a kitchen or.
I mean, I think part of the discussion that this board's had is building Station 2 and looking at the future as far as that reaching part of the needs for the area up in Shady Grove. So I'm not gonna say or step out and agree that nothing's being done or that there's nowhere for these folks to go should we find the funds to fund these positions. You know, but at the same time, we're then taxed with where those revenues come from for those recurring costs. So, I mean, it's not, again, my effort is not to take away from the folks in Shady Grove.
Oh, I understand.
It's not what I'm here to do.
I understand.
I'm just simply looking at these data sets in areas that we do have staff members like Steen Hatching and Keith Beach. And also looking at the conditions in which they're having to work in. So my position is to look at trying to address these for this request. I believe I said earlier, and I'll say it again, I do believe that all these areas at some point in time will come to a point that we're gonna have to do something about the firehouse in those places. But when I'm looking at 3 times the call volumes in these locations with staff members, I do think it's part of my job to consider, as a commissioner, what am I asking these folks to go to work in? And these kind of conditions. They're already in an emergency environment. So again, that is to reach out to those areas of decontamination and having those needs met. It's not an effort, I want to be very clear. This is not some regional, I'm going to take away from you to help me. It's simply to look at what the data set that was presented and to look at that and how we're considering a request. Thank you for your service and continue the good work.
I have one thing on the volume. If Shady Grove had a paid fireman in Shady Grove, our call volume would go up too because they're firefighter / EMT or paramedic. All these down at Steen Hatchie and the beaches, their calls are mostly medical. They don't call me. My neighbor was having a heart attack. Said, Norma, where were you? I said, we didn't get dispatched. They don't call us for medical, even though I'm a first responder and I'll do CPR on you in a heartbeat. I'm not called out to do it. The county was at one time said, we don't want y'all involved in medical for liability, but we're first responders. But all we get called out to is brush fires, house fires, wrecks, and lift assist. But if my neighbor next door is having a heart attack, they don't call me. But they call the beaches, they call Steen Hatchie because I've got a paid fireman / paramedic EMT. So your volume's up here.
Well, I believe the fire chief spoke to that, and that call volume was the total volume for the area, the region, and how those folks were paged out and the response that came with that. Is that correct?
If I could, Ms. Norma, are you saying that there are medical calls that don't necessarily go through dispatch.
They don't dispatch us for medical.
They don't call it out.
Century will be sent to calls
Right.
that fire is not dispatched to, because Century is the primary agency. And that's where, I don't know if everybody understands, Steve works for Century, so that's what he was alluding to earlier. So if Century gets dispatched to Keith Beach, they will come on the radio and ask to have Engine 6 first respond, or if it was a heart attack or whatever the call, possible stroke, anything like that. Because we have somebody that is within 5 minutes of being there. That's kind of what he was alluding to, that's correct. Yeah.
So in this county, which is one of the very few, fire does not get dispatched to medical calls unless medical or the ambulance service asks for their assistance. It's not an automatic dispatch like it is in most other counties and cities, which fire and EMS are both paged to the call. That's not how it works in this county. In this county, if it's a medical call or a lift assist, it's only the ambulance that gets paged to the call. That if the ambulance then says, well, this is a little bit more than we can handle, then we have to ask Perry to dispatch fire. The ambulance will have to ask them to do that. Now, if there's times when it don't go through fire that we respond to emergency calls. And if it's okay to talk about it, do I have permission? That we had a massive cardiac event of our volunteer fire fighters' family, which called me personally to help assist with EMS in order to try to revive their mother. That it didn't get paged out for fire to respond. I go to medical calls because I'm called my personal phone. They call me as a citizen to come help them, not as a volunteer firefighter, not as a EMT, but as a friend and neighbor. I get patched or sent or called. Now, I could probably call it in, but I'm not being called as a firefighter. I'm being called as a neighbor and a friend, so I don't know where that gray area is at, but that could be call numbers too that's not added up. So the call volumes, I understand numbers and it's important, and the numbers could increase if we had to pay firemen there full time. My thing is taking care of the volunteer firefighters that are there now, taking care of, allow us to decontaminate after these calls when we're covered in stuff that's not good for us. Cancer causing carcinogens after fires, bad chemicals and car wrecks that we're contaminated with, and we have no way to properly contaminate now. So if you think of the future and go ahead and build a manned station there, even though I'm not saying man it yet, but go ahead and plan on it being a manned station, so therefore when the time comes, we can man it, but we can still utilize the facilities so we can decontaminate and we can use what we don't have right now. Because I'm not taking away from the Station 6. I'm just saying that they already have a way to decontaminate now. They already have a way to take care of themselves and be safe. That's all I'm asking for.
Yes, yeah, look, we can sit here all night and talk about numbers. And you can make numbers say anything you want to say. But when you listen to these folks and what they have to go through now, and with the growth that's already occurring and that will continue, to me, it's a no-brainer. We are dependent on these volunteers. They have someone in the beach area already. So get you some more volunteers down there to help out. And let's get a firefighter to help our volunteers, who are the only ones that that we have down there. So I've said all I need to say.
So moving forward, there's probably a issue that probably should have, been addressed prior to this year. It probably should have been addressed a year or two ago to get started. I mean, as far as, I'm just meaning being proactive and getting the process started to make something happen in the community before, folks do get to where they can't call out, and then, the emergency, the calls are coming through the county, and why are you not servicing our community, or why is it taking 30 minutes to get someone there to service this community? So I'm gonna stand with, sports complex at number 1, Steenhatchee Fire at number 2, and Shady Grove at number 3, and just send in 3 appropriations.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make that into a motion, please.
I second that motion.
A motion and a second to have Taylor County Sports Complex as number 1, Steenhatchee Fire Construction as number 2, and new construction of Shady Grove Fire number 3. Ready to vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
I'd like to say something in the middle of that. I'm with you on that, the way the order you got it, but we need to make every special effort we can to come up with some money to get that ball rolling in Shady Grove too.
Yes.
I mean, that's just, I've done heard both sides of it, and I understand the beach, I understand Steenhatchee, and I understand them. And if their volunteers are not there, they in trouble up there. It's like 20 minutes for a truck to get there. And, I mean, we just need to come up with some revenue, some kind of way, some money to go ahead and get the ball rolling on that up there, and I'm all for that.
Thank you.
So it was approved, sports complex number 1, Steenhatchee Fire Station number 2, and Shady Grove Fire Station number 3. Correct?
Can I add one thing? From what I've heard, and I don't know, but I've heard that it takes 160 hours to complete a volunteer firefighter course.
206.
206.
For just the fire service.
For just the fire service. We've got an excellent representative right over here in Jefferson County, and I think y'all need to go to him and say, we need to get this changed at the state level, because that's a ridiculous amount of time being spent just to become a volunteer firefighter. And I think my husband can speak even better about it, because he tried to do it and couldn't complete it because.
We did it 2 times. They made us state mandated. We had, so Gary and I, we have 260 something hours in, not counting
That's a
all
strong
of the work we've done in 40 years, getting up in the middle of the night. And I know that has nothing to do with y'all, that's state mandated. And we have an awesome chief over here, and I just commend you, because I know when I talk to you, he has a history coming from a family of volunteers, so he has a heart for volunteers. And he sees to it that we train monthly. It gets hard sometimes, but we have to do it because we got to stay familiar with our trucks, our equipment. And I thank Dan for that. We're blessed to have you. You've helped us a lot. We've come a long way since Shady Grove. But now we're out of firefighters almost. So I might be 80 years old, and I love it. I don't want to ever get fired. If I have to use my walking cane to go across the street getting that fire truck, I can make you go fast. Get that red stuff on that red stuff.
Firmly believe you're gonna last longer than that.
It's in my heart.
Well, if y'all can get an occasion to do that, Jason Shope was able to get a toll road stop. I think we need to address the state of Florida and get something done about this volunteer, the amount of hours. It's too much.
I think that's gonna be on our workshop agenda, so feel free to, nothing next week, feel free to show up if you want. There'll be some discussion we'll have next week.
Yeah, I totally disagree with that. I don't want an EMT coming to my house that's had a little bit of training. I don't want a firefighter coming to my house that, a volunteer that, well, I did have a little experience one time and I passed the physical. I don't want the firefighters that are paid firefighters to be there, and you have a volunteer to come along that he had a little experience and he had a physical one time. They're there to protect us and our homes, and they're there to protect the other firefighter. So in the state of Florida, they put those requirements in there for a reason. it wasn't to make it difficult for somebody to become a volunteer firefighter, but they were put there to protect their fellow firefighters and to protect us, and that they're trained and they know what to do. So I'm not interested, for me, to try to change something. I want the most qualified people that I can get. And when we go through this process and make these classes so people can come, I think everybody would appreciate somebody that's well-trained, not, I had a little experience in a physical. Don't get it from me.
Commissioner Figel, can I say something about that? Would you mind if I say something? There is a problem nationwide with volunteer services, okay? That problem has been regulated out. Most of your volunteers are putting food on the table for their families or something. So they cannot be expected to reach the same level of training as a full-time firefighter, professional firefighter. Okay, that's a fact. And I know I was a volunteer firefighter down in the beaches. I worked with Mitch Sable down here at the beaches as a volunteer firefighter. And it got to the point where I was having to go to these courses and I couldn't stay with it because you can't go to college 4 nights a week, 4 hours a night and work a full-time job and do this sort of thing. Now in my own business, I have a pest control business. I train my people OJT 30 days before I even turn them loose with a can to go to your house to do a service. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the best training you can get. You cannot get that kind of training in a college or sitting in a classroom somewhere. You can't get that sort of thing. So don't rule out this volunteer. The volunteer services should be bolstered, and they should be bolstered with less regulation, not more.
We'll move on to number 17, the board to consider approval of the Federal Aviation Administration Grant pre-application requesting funding assistance for the design of 7 apron high mast lights at Perry Foley Airport, presented by Melanie, you there?
I'm here, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
It is, the FAA grant is a change to the taxiway improvement project realignment that you just approved. We found out there is not sufficient funding at this time with FAA to fund that project. So we switched up to the high mast lighting project. There's no match required from the board, and this is a design-only portion of the project.
Motion approved. That motion, we have a second. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed, same sign.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Melanie. County Administrator, item number 18, the county administrator present the annual status report for economic ad valorem tax exemption for superfund.
I have included in your packet a copy of the report that was supplied by Superfund that does indicate that they did make the $20 million plus capital investment and they added approximately 338 new jobs since 2019, which is over what they originally anticipated, if you will recall. The fiscal impact for the previous fiscal year was an abatement of $177,050.92.
That's over the last 3 years?
No, that's
Per year?
for the last fiscal year. Now, on the flip side, this last year, they paid $286,000 in their PPT. The real estate taxes remain unpaid for last year in the amount of $54,000.
They said they were gonna pay it, they gave us some date.
I do not believe the tax collector has a payment plan for them as of yet.
Is that a breach of the agreement?
I defer to Conrad. I believe the ordinance reads that if they are not current on their taxes, that the application may be denied.
Right.
But I don't know that necessarily means that at the time of the annual report.
That's not been.
But, you know,
To terminate, gave them, it was by ordinance. So to terminate, you have to do it by ordinance, because it's an ordinance.
So it's not a breach of the.
Not pay their taxes.
Well, everybody got their taxes.
Well, you're supposed to, for sure, but
But you're in that, anyway.
they, just as a practical matter, they should offer something to, with regard to their taxes, some plan.
Now, I can also tell you that their non-ad valorem assessments for 2022 is approximately $420,000 that they'll have margin to pay, and that is due to the improvements, the property improvements that they made, the equipment and everything that they added. So their amount that they are taxed has almost, well, not quite doubled. So it's gone from $286 to $420,000 just for the PPT.
86,400.
286 to approximately 420. They are only delinquent in their real estate taxes for 2021.
well, in the newspaper, in the newspaper, something happened in the newspaper, paying the bills too. The city, they owe the city. Somebody owes the city. I can't understand. If I'm paying $20,000 this month and the next month I'm paying 15 or 5, something going on. If my light bill, I wish it would be that, about $400 a month, but if it come down to 200, I don't think I say nothing to nobody.
Understood.
So, all this is continued upon these people, we paying our bills. Good faith, I vote in good faith that they gonna be good people and do what they say they're gonna do. But if they don't do what they say they're gonna do, I'm also good people tell, hey, look, you need to step up to the plate.
Question is, it may not be in the application, but what is the amount of citizens, U.S. citizens employed at this location versus the ones that are bused in? These type of applications are approved based on
Local.
and not necessarily even local, but even surrounding counties in businesses like this that may employ 150 or maybe it's 300 people, whatever the number is. But it's not to hire all these people, then lay them off and then bust their help in and then send them back over to get approved and replace them with new ones. These applications are approved and helping the local communities employ the ones that are unemployed. We can sit here and say that they did all they could do and didn't nobody want to sign up to go to work, but that's garbage. Because there's plenty of people that need work and live. Matter of fact, there's a mill out there that's about to be looking for 127 people about to be looking for a job.
That's right.
So the way they answered the question in the report, the question is, what is the total number of employees of the company and what percentage of these employees reside in Taylor County? Their answer was 338 full-time employees / staffing agency employees, 140 this period, which means the last year. 92% reside in Taylor County was how they answered that question.
And nobody, just like last year, nobody was here to answer that question last year, and I guarantee you, nobody sitting in this room answered that question tonight.
They were provided with the date and time of the meeting I did send an email this afternoon to see if a representative would be attending. I don't believe I've received an answer.
Oh, I don't doubt that it was requested someone be here, but it's just the fact that nobody's here.
No, sir.
But they want us to approve such to move on. And I struggle.
Well, would you like to table this until the next meeting and I can,
What we gotta do, wait around and beg for them to show up to the meeting?
Yeah, I don't need to have it.
I don't need to have it. If they can't show up to the meeting they're asked to come to, then I don't need to move no forward, to let them get the chance to beg and plead for the tax break.
Conrad?
I think I hear somebody saying they're gonna disapprove their application.
Sir?
I think I hear someone's talking about disapproving their application.
That's where I'm at.
Or revoking the approval?
Well,
For
yeah,
that too.
you reserve the right for consideration of, revocation of this ordering, granting it. Section D of the ordinance, let me just read it. Superpuff Snacks USA Inc. shall submit to the county an annual report providing evidence of continued compliance with the definition of a new business or an expansion of an existing business for each of the 10 years during which Superpuff be submitted to the county administrator by January 31st of each year. Well, wait a minute. Which Superpuff Snacks is eligible to receive ad valorem tax exemption. The annual report shall be submitted to the county administrator by January 31st of each year. The annual report, if the annual report is not received, or if the annual report indicates that Superpuff Snacks USA Inc. no longer meets the criteria of Chapter F, or Statute 196.12, county administrator shall make a report to the board, this is what you're doing, for consideration of revocation of this ordinance, granting the tax exemption. The board reserves the right to reduce the percentage of the exemption of Superpuff Snacks USA Inc. So,
That 31 comes in there, that 31st. Is that, in other words, we'd have to wait till the 31st to do that?
well, they've already submitted. Of course, you could always say, you submitted, but it's not approved. You'd probably say, well, let me amend it. Of course, understand, this is an ordinance here, so if you're gonna revoke, you gotta pass an ordinance.
So Conrad, can you explain the criteria of Florida State Statute 196.012? And everything to whether or not they meet that criteria?
We gotta pull it up.
Okay.
Not attached here, is it?
No, sir.
Why don't you pull it up? 196.199, section 9, Rwanda. So that's the report. It would be 196.016. See if that's the right one. No, it's 196.012.
Okay.
That's the criteria statute.
So that is where it lays out the eligibility
Right.
for the exemption.
this is really all 192.012 is definitions, you know? And I've scanned it, but I haven't studied it. I don't know whether it says anything about failure to pay their taxes, but y'all have discretion
Yes, sir.
to revoke. The board does.
Anyone want to make a motion, or I will?
I will, I'll make a motion to vote.
And I'll second that.
A motion and a second.
Pay our ordinance to revoke. You ain't revoking tonight. Understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Then you have
Yes, you want to.
Amend to the ordinance.
Second.
A motion and
prepare
a
an
second.
ordinance, right? Okay, now I understand you prepare an ordinance and then we have a notice and then you have a public hearing on it.
Got a motion and a second? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed, same sign? So, going to number 19, the county administrator's agreement out of Taylor County Sports Complex for county tournaments.
So as you know, we have two softball tournaments scheduled for, the spring. One the end of, February and then one April 1st, I believe. And we have a little bit, well, I have a concern about being able to properly provide food and drink to what could be 1,000 attending, between 600 and 1,000 people. My concern is that our concessions efforts will not be adequate. So in some of the internal staff discussions, we wondered if it would be prudent to allow food trucks at the sports complex just for those tournaments. I know that that is something that is utilized by some of the festivals around town. And,
I'll speak with, on this, you know, we play ball all over the place, and I had spoken to staff prior to the meeting in this, and I think it would be beneficial that we do have, I mean, there's food trucks, they do have the concessions, but they do have food trucks in order to service the, like, these events are, I mean, it could be 2,000 people at some of these events, obviously ours won't be that sizable, but I mean, you're talking 600 to 1,000 more people in Taylor County, and all trying to grab hamburger and hot dog at one spot. We've got the room to put them, and I think the idea is not to leave, you know, really any vendor out that has the capabilities to set up. I'm in favor of approving this initiative with these terms.
I believe the way the application is that we can limit it to one truck for, you know, coffee. You know, we don't want 3 coffee trucks and no food. But
Just don't want to get 3 coffee trucks, you set up competition for people, it would be like, it's not, you know, some not, you know, get the service that they're, you know, that they feel like they should have gotten, and vice versa, you want to set up 2 barbecue, you know, trucks out there, so they're competing against one another. So, there is, I think we did talk about it, there would be a facility usage charge.
yes,
So, in order to be able, because they're gonna be, being able to park at this facility and service these folks, so. I'm in favor of this initiative in order to service.
All he's saying is no free lunch. If he come, he got to pay the person to vend it.
Yes, for the space.
He would have to pay for the spot, just like I think we probably have to pay for spots at these festivals, and it's not.
At Forest Capitol Hall, I mean, we basically mimicked their application for food vendors at Forest Capitol Hall. We partnered with the chamber and tried to talk through all the different scenarios, and the way it's listed is, we accept only 2 of each item on a first come, first served basis to ensure fairness. And that, for a nonprofit, it would be $75 per day. I think we need to probably add per day. and for commercial, $100.
Got a few questions. I guess the first question would be, that you would verify, that they have all their permits and.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
And all of that. Now, would this be in lieu of concessions?
No.
Or we would still have our concessions?
Yes.
And my question was, I think you just answered it, how would you decide which barbecue place gets to, who wins and who loses? So I guess from my perspective, I wouldn't care how many barbecue people were out there, you know. I eat a sandwich at this one and a sandwich ribs over here at this one or something, I don't know. It's the same thing with coffee or whatever, but it's not a big deal to me. I'm just, just giving another perspective.
Sure.
But I think it's a good idea. Do we have enough locally, or do you advertise for people to come in?
I would like to run an article in our local newspaper, alerting our local folks, and we could reach out to them as well.
I think the chamber does a really good job at this, so I think the chamber's involved.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we have partnered with the chamber on this.
Yeah.
I just want to, and maybe just answer, but, we do have local vendors here, Mr. Livingston, I think.
Oh,
is a
absolutely,
barbecue vendor.
yes, we have a
Would
list.
he have precedence over an outsider coming in, being that the funds he takes are gonna be spent here, where somebody else is gonna leave? Do we need to make sure that our locals, are first coffee shop on the scene, or, their trucks?
I think we got local vendors too.
And we will reach out to them.
And them come first over the outside ones, because we do have some good vendors here that's gonna keep them running here.
That's where my head is
Yeah.
local.
Yeah.
Local events, local tournaments, that's the whole reason for the tournaments is to bring the folks in, spend money at the restaurants, spend money at these vendors, and everyone locally benefit from.
So do you want us to add a sentence that there will be a local vendor preference to this application?
That's local vendor preferences, what's.
I mean, local business.
Yeah,
have preference
yeah,
to.
for
Yeah,
sure. I
you want
would-
us to add that?
Yeah,
Okay.
we would definitely want it to be local vendors.
I totally agree with it. And if there's a restaurant that has a food truck capability, and they see the opportunity, then that'll give them more.
So we can advertise it that way, and we'll also add that to the application.
I think we gotta get local vendors to be able to cover what we're looking at.
I think so, if they're available, but we don't want to, we just don't want to put ourselves in a position, if that local vendor isn't available, that we cannot reach out, or we cannot take an application from someone from another area.
Sure.
Okay?
Any more discussion?
Yeah. I had a businessman that contacted me and talked about it. He said he was down at the beach, on might have been in Steam Hatchet. He went up there and bought a sandwich and the reason he bought that sandwich because he ran a sandwich shop too. That money didn't take no tax, they took the taxes out. So he asked them later, he said, when you leaving, what if the person that checks on your taxes come by? Say, we just close the shop and leave. We need to be able to collect.
Now, that is not collected by the county, that's collected by the state, so there would be no way for us to monitor that. But we can certainly make sure that they have the proper licenses and permits. And that they have a Taylor County business license, in order to conduct business here. But if you're talking about state sales tax, and I believe you are.
I am.
Yes, sir. That's not anything that we regulate, because that's through the state of Florida.
I think these vendors will be vetted through our process in order to be able to set up our facilities.
But that's not part of our vetting process.
Okay, but the local sandwich shop owner come here and ask us, so you gonna collect sales tax and see, did the sales tax is collected, and he have an advantage of it, what are we gonna tell him?
It would be I don't know that it would be any different than if they set up anywhere else in Taylor County. I mean, I don't know that there would be an additional step in the process if we allow them to do this at the sports complex. Now, I can certainly add a question to the permit. Do you pay, do you collect and pay, state tax? If y'all would like me to do that, I don't mind doing that.
Is that our business? Is it, Mr. Bishop?
Pardon?
Is it our business to, I'm just asking the question, to these vendors, potential vendors, is it our business to ask them if they pay sales tax? To the state?
To ask them if they pay sales tax?
To the state, yeah.
Well, we do get, the county does get a portion of sales tax, correct? We have sales tax. So I would say, yeah, yes.
Yes, the businessman come to this meeting and ask, do they pay sales tax? I want to be able to give them an answer.
Well, we can certainly ask that, add that question to the permit. I just don't.
Yeah.
Okay, so if that's sufficient,
Yeah.
we can certainly add that.
Bob?
Absolutely.
Good.
Mark Valla, 338 Forest Slaughter Road. Come up because I've been with the Forest Fest for a long time. We have the food vendors and everyone has about 2,550 vendors. Obviously, we're a nonprofit, not a government agency, but the question of sales tax has come up, obviously, a lot of people are selling that. My understanding is Department of Revenue handles that. And probably because we're a large enough event, they'll actually send people down to spot check. I do know one year they tried to get us to do their work for us. They stopped up at the chamber for the festival office and handed us a bunch of packets that we need to hand this out to all our vendors, and we're like, that's not your job. They only did that once. But as far as, and this is just me as a citizen, I'm not representing the newspaper all day. If someone felt a vendor was not paying proper sales tax, I would call the Department of Revenue, and they might send someone. But that's just my personal opinion. I was just gonna say, as someone who has dealt with with festival, it's again, we're large enough that we have enough vendors. They'll usually end up sending someone down to spot check.
Next, sir.
Good. Thank you, Mark. We can tell them that, but I guarantee you that 3-4 businessmen come to this podium. And we ain't gonna tell it. We don't know. It's not part of our business.
The only other thing I would add is I'm sure if you asked them if they're paying their state sales tax, I would be highly surprised if they said no. Yeah.
All right, we have a vote.
Yeah, I got a problem.
We need a motion.
You need a motion?
Yeah, we have a motion to approve.
And what would the motion be that we, state what the motion is?
The motion is gonna be to approve, us to allow vendors to, set up at the sports complex
With a local preference?
with a local preference.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed, same sign. All right. 19A, the board to discuss Taylor County Motor Annual Ordinance, Commissioner Beagle.
I added this to the agenda, and I want to preference this before I get started, that I am in no way against mud bonds in Taylor County. I know that's been, said out there, and that's not true. I am for mud bonds in Taylor County. I've had several questions, to come to me in the last week, and I had called Lawanda about the questions, and so I thought that some of these things, and I'm going to get into the questions, are something that we need to look at and see if we need to put a little more teeth into the ordinance or the application, whichever one. But the one thing, and I've got about 4 things here, but one thing was to clarify the 7A to the 7P. And I looked at the application, and it says from 7A to 7P. But the question that came to me, is it 7A to 7P today? And is it 7A to 7P tomorrow and the next day? Or is it 7P from the first day that they start until however many days it is going? And I assumed, but again, I don't want to assume anything when the public is asking me questions, but I assumed that it meant 7A to 7P on this day and 7A to 7P on that day. And I think that would be just for the mud bogging itself, not for any other activities that may go on, but just the mud bogging portion itself. So that's the first thing that I wanted us to clarify. Is it, which way is it?
A license for an event shall state the dates and hours during which the event may be conducted. Unless otherwise approved by the board, the hours will be limited to 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. What that means is that the board has the right to increase it or decrease it. The hours will be limited to between 7 a.m. unless otherwise approved by the board. In answer to your question, does not mean that you go from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. for 3 days. You know, that it doesn't mean that at all.
Should we distinguish that?
Well, again, you may want to amend your ordinance, but that takes a little bit of time to do that, of course, as always. But if someone comes in and says they want to do it from 7 a.m. to say 10 p.m., you have the right to do that pursuant to this, to what I just read you.
I want to know the reason why we even need to amend the ordinance. I haven't heard a reason yet why we would amend the ordinance other than the time was questioned of whether it was 7A to 7B. I mean, I'd need a reason before I made a change.
It just needed to be clarified. Is it each day, or is it from the beginning of the thing to the end? But
I
you're
think I
saying,
answered that question.
so it's basic.
Sure it is.
Okay. The other question that came, and this is questions to me from other people, I think the ordinance says something about, I read it, that there would be no advertising until the application had been approved. And I have not seen advertising. I've heard that there's been advertising already for March. I don't know that. So when I was asked that, I said, I don't know, but I'll find out. And if it has been, and if it goes against the ordinance, then I don't see any sanctions for that if that does happen. I don't know if we want sanctions or not, but if you've got something in an ordinance and it's not being adhered to.
Well, there is a provision that any violation of this ordinance can be fined $1,000 up to $5,000.
So that would include advertising before the
I think it
application?
says any violation, if I'm not mistaken.
The way
That
it's worded, hold on.
it's required upon receipt of an application for a license to, oh, that's 1,000 people, let's see.
It's section 10.-42.
42.
On the first page.
All right. A penalty for violation of the requirements of this article is $1,000 for the first offense and $5,000 for each offense thereafter. Said violation is a civil infraction. That's all encompassing.
So that's any.
That's all encompassing. It
Okay.
says a penalty for violation of the requirements of this. And with respect to a person shall not advertise or announce by any means or medium, including but not limited to pamphlets, handbills, newspapers, radio, and television. This was before the internet, probably, or we didn't put that in there. The holding of an event prior to the granting of a license permitting such event. The licensee or other person shall not print, distribute, broadcast, or use any such advertisement or announcement or any other advertising of the event, that's all inclusive, which has not first been approved by the Board of County Commissioners.
So there is,
It's in there.
okay. There was another question about the noise, and I know there's nothing in the ordinance that addresses that. However, I think, it's my understanding that the sheriff, his department has been trying to have a time, I guess, where loud music, such as music or whatever, stopped. And I know I've heard that after 10 o'clock, the sheriff can come around and stop that, and then it was said, oh no, it's 11, and then I think last time they were told, no, it's 1 o'clock, and I don't know what it is.
Well, the licensee shall operate the event only on those days and during the hours specified on the license. And who approves the license? Y'all. See? And 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. unless y'all agree for it to be longer, which you have that discretion.
So as it stands right now then, as of 7P, all activities would cease in terms of logging and.
Unless y'all agreed to the application that said that they wanted to do it longer and you approved the license. It gives it, gives us discretion and authority, because
Okay.
a lot of things don't end at 7 p.m., you know? For
Right.
instance, a football game. I mean, that's why it was stated that way, in anticipation that a person or an entity would want a longer period of time. And put it in their application.
Let's understand that the bogging part stops at 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. The truck stop, but I mean, like you mentioned, there's other things that go on in these events that may go on in later into the night. I believe there is a cutoff for music, and I think the folks are here, they may could speak to it. But I think there is a cutoff for the music, for the bands and all playing, so. And I think you have some other after-hours events that they do at this, this facility, so. Yeah, I don't know what the 7 A to 7 P means, just bogging, or does that mean all activity?
Well, it says the event.
I mean, I certainly, if I was there, and there was music going on after 7, I probably want to, enjoy that. If it's going on at 2 a.m. or 1 a.m., I don't know, there's certainly complaints about that.
Well, again, whatever they put in their application, again, y'all have discretion to grant it or not grant it.
Okay, so right now, we've got 7A to 7P.
Well, and in the past, I think they've gone long past 7 p.m.
So when they come with their application for approval for this event, then they
need to put in.
They need to specify the times of what's
Right.
going on.
Right.
And we would approve based on what's on the application.
Or disapprove, or they change, or right.
I got you.
Okay, and that's fine, as long as we've got something that is clear. So if there are complaints, then the sheriff or his officers can say, here it is, right here.
In the application.
They're allowed to go till 1 o'clock or whatever time it's been approved here, and that's the way it is. Okay, I'm fine with that, whatever we decide. And then the other issue that I was asked about was the northbound lane usage. You know, I don't know, I'm just telling you what was asked of me, or told to me that it's never been implemented as was agreed on last year. And I'm going strictly by what I was told.
I don't know. I think everybody ought to, if they made an agreement, they ought to abide by it, whoever it was, but it's not in the ordinance on that one.
Okay, so where is it then? Where is that?
I believe it, Conrad, wasn't the ordinance amended to allow for ingress and egress and a dedicated lane?
I think, yeah, you're right, and I don't have it here. I think it was one that everybody sat down and agreed upon.
That is under 1093 subsection B.
1093?
Yes, sir. It's on page 6 of 8.
Okay, let's see.
Yeah.
All right.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think it's pretty, I think special access is what we need to read on, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If ingress and egress to the event is by way of non-public roadway, the applicant shall ensure one lane of traffic, maintained road service, not including ditch, at least 10 feet wide is reserved for the exclusive use of A, EMS for ingress and egress to the event, B, for property owners whose property is adjacent to the non-public roadway, adjacent owners for ingress and egress to their own property, and C, as an exit lane for patrons. Said dedicated lane shall be cordoned off from unauthorized use by any means necessary. At a minimum, traffic control cones should be deployed approximately every 50 feet along the edge of the said dedicated lane. The applicant will also ensure that the adjacent landowner's primary means of access to his or her property remains unobstructed. And of course, that's something that, you know, before the event, you can't be saying they're not going to do it. You understand what I'm saying?
So to make sure that I understand, the way this ordinance is written is if there is advertising that is ahead of the granting of the permit, that the first.
Should not do it. Should not do it.
Okay, and so who actually, or if the provisions of special access are not met, who is responsible for issuing that citation and that levying that fine?
Well, we say it's a civil violation, so our code enforcement officer can issue it, you know, and then it would go before code enforcement board, or we don't have one.
No, sir, it would,
It could come before, I don't think the court really hasn't been wanting to hear these.
I mean, we do have a hearing officer.
Yeah,
if
it would
it's,
go before the hearing officer.
if it's, if the fine is not paid.
Should a ticket.
I think we have folks from Iron Horse here, would you like to speak to any of it?
Thank you, Commissioners. Just real briefly, just to address these super quick, the event is defined in the ordinance as the mud hogging. We talk about music that's actually not regulated by the hours, by the face of the ordinance. According to my reading of that ordinance, we'd be happy to work with the county and make sure that all people's peace is respected and that this is done in a way that makes sense. We've got other events in the county that go past 7 p.m. with fireworks and things like that, where the whole community enjoys it and it's a good thing. And there's obviously a balance that has to be met there, and we're of course happy to continue to work with the county commission on hours and sound. So having said that, if there's clarification needed to our current application, we'd love to hear about that and get that clarification on the books so that we can go ahead and move forward. As far as advertisements in previous county commission meetings, we've heard from this commission that ultimately, you know, Iron Horse, if you guys want to put an advertisement out there without having your permit in place yet, that's your risk to take. And feel free. That was basically the message that was received before. Nobody else has been sanctioned or cited for advertising before a permit came out. If that's going to be a change in policy, we can certainly talk about the merits of that, but I'm curious to know what the actual problem is. Going back, noise hours is the same answer. We can talk about that. Again, the activity is defined as mud bogging activity. Mud bogging right now ends at 7 p.m. at Iron Horse. We have our rules are posted online for our events. Right now, the way that they are written, music can go on until 11, and then the music stops, and there's strict quiet hours that are strictly enforced. Lastly, the lane usage. I mean, I suspect that all of this comes from a very small subset of people, and I fail to see the actual problem here that we're trying to address, but we're here to work with you guys and do the right thing by you all and by the public. The lane usage, we've been in 100% compliance with. We did a huge amount of work on this last year. We did a huge amount of work negotiating this, getting this done right, working with which way each lane needs to go, working with fire safety, working with the sheriff's office, working with the public, working with the commission. It is a flat and outright lie, and I'd ask that this not take up any more of your time or ours unless there's some solid proof, some solid allegation, or some photographic evidence that this hasn't been observed, because I can tell you 100% it has been. You all have any questions for me?
I don't have any questions, but I do have a comment. If I have someone, and I'm a county commissioner, and if I have someone wherever in this county, and they call me and ask me a question about something, and I don't know it, or if I do know that it is in direct conflict with this ordinance, and I believe an ordinance is the law, right, Mr. Bishop?
Yes.
And and we get dinged all the time. You don't enforce your own ordinances, okay? So if we're gonna have an ordinance, wouldn't you agree that you follow your ordinance?
Commissioner Fiegel, I wouldn't begin to tell you how to do your job, and I agree with you.
I just
The
asked you
ordinances
a
are there for a
question.
reason.
You don't need to tell me how to do my job. I know how to do my job. But, these are questions and concerns, and they rightfully should get an answer. I'm not against the mud bog. I don't care how long you stay open out there, okay? I don't go to them. Not that there's anything wrong with them, it's just not a sport that I enjoy, so I don't care. But I'm trying to get answers from a citizen of Taylor County who deserves an answer.
I have no problem with that, Commissioner. I just ask that we not allow a small group of people to essentially use the system to take up everybody's time needlessly when we're in full compliance with what has been spent hours and hours and hours on.
Whether it's one person or 500, that one person or 10, they deserve an answer from us.
I agree with you, Commissioner, and again, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, happy to work with you. And this was not meant as a criticism against you personally. Just saying that this is the situation, this is what we got. We're happy to work with all of y'all.
I don't have any comments. I just wanted to comment really on the advertising part of it. Somehow, really, if any business wants to advertise before they receive a permit or approved to do something, I mean, it is kind of putting the cart ahead of the horse, but you know what? If a business wants to go spend money and do that before they get approved, so be it. I don't care. Why do I care?
I don't either. I don't have a problem with that, but we need to change this ordinance then.
I agree.
And I'm willing to do that. I don't care how far ahead of time. I do not care when they advertise. But we have an ordinance that says A, B, C. So either change the ordinance or enforce the ordinance.
You need the ordinance to say 7 to 7 on the truck running and making the noise with the truck. And then it needs to be written down there, you're gonna play music, you can play it till a certain time of night, that's just, it needs to be straight up, where the sheriff's department can say, well, it's 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock, now it's time to cut music off, or stop the fireworks.
Couldn't that be specified in the permit?
They can.
It needs to be approved, so that way you don't have to have another ordinance, and then you can have that as a guidance in the permit, that's approved.
That's just something.
That's why it was written that way. Because things could have changed, and so people who make their application for a permit want to change it, and y'all approve it, fine. That's why it wasn't such that that you couldn't change it. The other thing is with regard to the land use, I hope that you agree with me that, number one, it has to be violated before. You know, y'all haven't even had the mud bog yet, so how can somebody come in and say that it's been it's gonna be violated? I think maybe they're saying that it happened in the past. I don't know that. It didn't come before this board.
I promise you, we worked really hard on that.
Yeah, I did too.
I know you did. When I say we, I mean collectively, we. And I was personally there making sure also that it went the way that we expected it to go. And I can tell you from my personal experience, I know Harry will tell you the same thing, that we strictly abided by the terms of that ordinance. And Commissioner Fiegel, if you ever, or if any of you commissioners, but Commissioner Fiegel, if you have questions and want to talk with us at any time, we'd be happy to sit down with you, work through particular problems or questions. We want you to know that that offer's on the table as well.
I appreciate that, and again, about the advertising, I don't know, I mean, I'm trying to figure out why in the world this was put in here.
I'll tell you why. It's pretty simple. Now, I think I'm the only one that was here when this ordinance was passed. I drew it up. You have no idea. You think you've been through some hard negotiations and some harsh hearings? This almost did it was almost as bad as the Seminole one. You remember the Seminole one where we did it, you know? That was a coal fire plant. Oh, that was something else. We had the meeting at the high school auditorium and sat up there the board sat up there on the stage and had a red light when somebody yelled too loud. You were there. Oh, you know, we got out of there alive. You know, I'm still here. But it was hard. But this one, the reason Mr. Figley was put in there like that is because some of the people who were there wanted to make sure that they knew that when it was coming, you know, when the mud bog was coming. So that's why it was put in there like that. And what the parameters, the parameters of the mud bog. Nobody knew exactly. This was a long time ago, and mud bogs were very new in this area of the country at that particular point in time. It's like 2004, 2003 or something like that. So that's why it was put in there. There was a reason for it. It wasn't just arbitrarily put in there, but there was a reason for it. And it passed.
Yeah, well, for right now,
Well, things change. That's why you have the ability to amend the ordinances.
I see no reason right now why they can't advertise. They want to advertise 6 months ahead of time. That's fine with me. I don't have any problem with
You
it.
know, we can do an ordinance and delete that part of the ordinance, you know, if we have to. This is, you know, but you gotta have a public hearing on that, and it is what it is now. You know?
Right, but I mean, and I understand that. I know it takes time but you can do it.
Oh, sure. Y'all tell me.
You know, even if it's 6 months from now, at least
We got time,
we've got it right.
we got time to change
We've
it.
got plenty of time. We've got it right.
I would like to request that we do make that, look forward to make that change with the advertisement.
We support it.
I'd like to move forward with an ordinance change. To change.
I would too.
I don't care how far in advance they want to advertise the business.
And commissioners and Attorney Bishop and Commissioner Fiegel in particular, I just want to emphasize here that I apologize if my client's frustration in feeling that they are being singled out and attacked a little bit by a very, very small group of people in this situation has led through in my comments. We are committed to this community, committed to working with every one of y'all, doing right by you guys, and doing right by the community. We think it's a good event, we think it's a good place, and we think it really provides a benefit. So you can count on that. You can count on the fact that we'll work with you, and we'll do right by you guys, we'll do right by the community, and we're gonna live up to our word every single time.
I don't have a problem with the mud bog. I think it's something that our community wants. And I would think the majority of the people want it. I don't have any problem with it. I think, you know, from what I hear, it's a nice event. But again, when I have questions from anyone, it's my responsibility to try to get answers. And if it's something we need to change, then we need to change. If it's something that we don't, then I'm okay with that too. This is not anything personal or anything else, just what I just said.
Just a quick question. I just want to make sure I'm clear, and this is a question for Conrad. As far as the advertisement, if any organization, any mud bog is, as of right now, is advertising ahead of the permit, should it be treated, any complaints, as a code enforcement complaint where someone has to call and make a complaint, provide their name and address?
Sure.
Okay.
You don't want anybody, yeah. Sure.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you all.
Thank you. If you have any questions, holler at me.
Likewise.
All right. All right, so is there a motion?
I don't think we needed a motion or anything, did we? We went through.
To amend the ordinance?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah.
No, you need to prepare. I always ask y'all to vote on whether you want me to prepare an ordinance to amend the requirement of no advertisements prior.
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
A motion, a second, all in favor?
All right.
Okay, so understand, it's still in, but I'm gonna prepare one to get it out, and you'll have a public hearing and determine whether it's gonna go out or not.
Understood, sir.
Do we need to do it on the time for the thing to end in the evening?
Well, that's gonna be done in the application. I think
We'll have a meeting and talk about a good way to make that real clear.
Okay, good.
That's smooth.
Should the ordinances, if we're gonna amend it anyway, should it say on that 7A to 7P that, that can be, approved for a different time, if the board decides to do so?
That's what it says. That's what it
It says
says.
that.
Okay.
In the application.
That's what it says. It may not be the greatest, no, it's what it says.
Yes, but it's conflicting on how the permit is written, or when you do your thing, so you do
We'll
a
meet
permit.
about it.
Yeah, time and time, but we'll work on it. We'll work on it.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
All right. County administrator to discuss informational items.
I just wanted to advise the board that I will be attending the 2023 Access 67 Broadband Summit on January 26th and 27th. And the purpose of this is really to connect with federal, state, and private resources to ensure high-speed connectivity across the state. Upon my return, I will be sure to update the board. I understand that there is expected to be a large attendance, not just from counties, but from other representatives, so I'm sure I'll have a lot of information to share. I'll take lots of notes. And also, just to notify the board, I have been appointed to the Finance Committee of the Gulf Consortium. We will have our first meeting at the end of the month, yes.
That's so good.
Yes. They're remote meetings, so I will not have to travel for those. And I will try to prepare for these meetings outside of normal business hours. But I am pleased to be serving on that committee.
Congratulations. That's really
You
good
gonna
for us.
prepare for these meetings outside of normal business hours?
Yes, sir. I don't want it to, get in the way of our normal day-to-day operations. The meetings themselves will be held during normal business hours, of course. But just like serving on the policy review committee, I take that work home and do that on my own time. I really don't want it to be a conflict, and it's something I enjoy.
Yes. All right, good.
Benefit the county,
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, if it's benefit the county, and I don't have a problem personally doing it like it. No, I would never ask anyone to do something on county.
Well, I don't have time for that during normal working hours, and it's perfectly fine. And that's all I have.
You're sure? Because you are doing something for the county, for us, it's not something for Wanda.
It's
Okay.
fine.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Well, I'll offer you another job.
Sir?
Comments, concerns, or reports for non-agenda items?
Mark Bell, P3, 84 Slaughter. Just a quick question, because I think I had asked this a while back, and the speed limit signs on Industrial Drive. There's still 25 mile per hour ones on either side of Big Bend Technical, but I know there used to be 45 mile per hour signs on either side, and I'm assuming that's still the speed limit, but I get a little nervous driving down that road going 45 when there's no speed limit sign that says that I can do
Where is it?
Industrial Drive.
Oh,
It used to be 45 everywhere but in front of Big Bend Technical. But there are no 45 mile per hour signs either at Puckett or as you're leaving the school zone. And when they haven't been there for probably going on years here now.
I would imagine it's already there.
I'm sure it's set, it's just, there's no signs.
We probably just need to.
I'll double check on that. I thought we had already looked at that, but I'll check again.
I noticed it about last week, they're still not there.
we can get some.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Anyone else? All right. Victor?
Again, I want to thank my Shady Grove, people for coming and being willing to speak. And I appreciate hearing Norma and for Steve's member. I appreciate y'all's dedication and what you do for that community, what you have done. And we're gonna get better. And we're gonna work on that volunteer. We're gonna start on that, and we're gonna hopefully get that the way it should be. I appreciate the board and staff.
Yeah.
Bye.
All right, good. Bishop?
Good night.
I'm
I'm good too.
All right. What do I hear? Motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Adjourn.